Yep, everybody here? Good. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome back James Murdoch, one of our illustrious co-chairs who is a glutton for punishment and was here last year as well, and Rich Greenfield from Pali Capital, another 2-year, we have to have the Prince give us little badges or something for campaign ribbons. Anyway, Rich is a pillar of the New York analyst community, especially as regards to media, and James needs no introduction, so I'm just going to let them talk. And we will, as usual, do questions afterward in the last, I'll give you the sort of 10-minute warning,
that sounds
and
great.
We'll go from there.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Well, first of all, thanks, James, for coming. I think from a big picture standpoint, and one of the questions that I think I get a lot is, you left a pretty great job. You were at one of the world's most preeminent distribution platforms in B-Sky-B. And you left that job now a little over a year ago, I guess, to work in newspapers and lots of other businesses, some pay TV in Eastern Europe and outdoor advertising in Russia and Australian newspapers. Why? Why the change from what was a very specific platform to all this other stuff?
Yeah, well, I was saying to Rich earlier that it would look like it was probably a reasonably poor career move to go from one of the a business that we're very proud of at B-Sky-B, growing extremely fast and really transforming itself every day as it goes along, to businesses that I think are hugely exciting, and a mix of businesses across News Corporation around parts of the world that we just have really, really interesting challenges, but I think huge opportunities in. I think the newspaper business is the one I think that's at the heart of your question, which is, a business that I think a lot of the broad community, the broad sort of commentariat has concluded is in terminal decline. And I think it's really important to sort of look at that and say, well, what brands and what companies within that mix can be competitive, what companies can transform themselves, and what do you have to bring to these types of businesses, and what kind of change do you have to bring to really, really innovate? So I actually think the newspaper business is one of the great opportunities for innovation in modern media, and is something that we're immensely excited about. And I think it's also important work, because if we don't get going and we don't sort of understand how to grow our share, how to reach out to customers more, how to be more data-driven in the newspaper business, the economics of professional journalism will suffer, and we'll end up ceding the ground to, subsidized journalism, as we've seen, in places like Italy, certainly in television news in the UK, and I think that's not a great place to be. So I think it's important work. But the broader question, Rich, around, it looks very complicated. There's all these different assets. Why would you do that? It looked much more straightforward before. I think the question for us at News is really, how do we build out from a position today of tremendous diversity and breadth across a variety of businesses, from really a leading position in Indian pay television and the broadcasting side, the content side, as well as the platform side in both cable and satellite, all the way to Sky Italia, a tremendously challenging marketplace, Italy, but a business that has been, I think, one of the great success stories in news. And I think when you look at that breadth of that, it's just an enormously exciting opportunity to say, how do we take that and really double the size of these assets and really improve the mix and improve the breadth of these businesses, improve the pace and the quality of them over the next 5 years? I don't know, I think you have to love a challenge, right?
Just a quick show of hands. How many people actually still subscribe to a newspaper or buy one daily? And this is obviously a skewed subset, obviously, just given the type of people we have here, but given the digital focus of this conference. But I'm sure if we took the age down by 10 years, we'd get a quarter to a third as many hands. So I guess the question related to newspapers specifically is, if you were to take one of your papers like The Sun, what should The Sun be beyond its print life? How does it evolve?
Well, first of all, I think that question, that it's at the heart of that question is an assumption that the print life isn't a good place to be, right? Fair. Now, and I would dispute that, because I think The Sun, first of all, is one of the great brands in Britain today. It's the only newspaper, I think 6 out of the last 7 months. It's grown its absolute readership and concurrently its market share much faster than the rest of the industry. And it's been actually a great success story. It's benefited enormously from the pressures on a lot of the retail sector, for example, as you get price wars and things like that, because it's simply the most effective way to build real reach across Britain in very, very fast turnaround for advertisers who need to get out there and change a price for this Friday's sale or this Saturday's sale and whatnot. And the volume of activity that we can put through a supermarket, for example, is just staggering. We also turn that print machine to our own products as well. So, for example, we are the largest short break holiday agency in the country today at The Sun with our £9.50 holidays, which is tickets maybe to go across the channel or go to a holiday park where you bring a caravan and things like that. And these are huge new business opportunities for us as a marketing organization that I think are pretty exciting. Now, the print product itself is something that is vibrant, that is full of great journalism, that campaigns relentlessly, that has a real bond with its readers. And that's why we have about a third of the country reading our paper on any given day, because it's about an 9 million readership newspaper. Now, so I think that print piece has a lot of life in it. What we need to do in the print piece is we need to innovate in terms of availability. We need to understand the supply chain better, all the way from the forest in Scandinavia to the newsagent on your way to work. The number of newsagents in the UK is declining fast, and that makes it harder. The purchase experience for a newspaper is changing. So there's a lot of opportunities to keep innovating. We've got a lot of momentum in a paper like that. And this is the key issue, is when we look at the newspaper industry, we tend to lump everything together. We lump, a pretty poorly American local, newspaper in a small town whose classified advertising is drying up, with great national brands like the Times or the Sun or the Sunday Times that I think have a lot of life in them. Digitally, I think the Sun has, a long way to go, but is already showing a lot of life. So from looking at things like our bingo business, which is simple casual gaming businesses that are producing $30+ million a year right there. So a tiny piece, an offshoot of this business, or fantasy football around the core brands of football coverage and goals, football reporting that we do in the paper. So I think there's a lot to be done online for newspapers. I definitely believe, though, that simply publishing the paper online isn't enough. It's a question of finding how you take the online experience to engage with your customers much, much more regularly and build up loyalty and frequency there. And that's something that I think is very promising.
And sticking with the theme of this panel, which is global but local, when you look at what you're doing in the UK and what you think you're doing right to drive that business, to grow the subscription base and to get into new businesses, is the actual environment very different or unique in Australia for that business?
Well, I think the Australian business, shouldn't get into too much detail on, is different. There's a lot more papers there. So it's national papers, it's big metropolitan papers, as well as the suburban newspaper group there. So each one of those types of businesses faces different, kind of looks at different opportunities going forward. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that the News International business in the UK is one that is like all businesses today, with a big advertising piece of it under a lot of pressure. Bringing a lot of change to that organization, which we've been doing over the last year, and taking that forward is going to be a big, big challenge. And it's not going to be, it's certainly not going to be easy. But I think that we have, so much of the right ingredients in place in papers like this. And I think it's important to look at those brands and look at that, the unique strength of some papers or some journalistic franchises, if you will, as opposed to saying, listen, the whole newspaper industry is sort of no good because young people prefer video games.
Which
is sort of a too simplistic a way to think about it, in my view.
So let's shift gears. Star, India. You were in charge of Star before you left to go, into Sky and then now into News. Star's had a huge run and then kind of hit a speed bump and now seems back on a growth path. Just give us a sense of, is India still a huge opportunity? Has it changed since you were actually running that business on a daily basis? What's the big opportunity? How has it changed? And what should people be looking for in terms of how you operate that business very locally, versus the rest of News Corp?
Well, First of all, I think India, when we look at the world and we look at where we're going to be putting our energy and our resources, a lot of that's around people resources as well. It's not just about money, but where are we really going to focus? India is definitely, we think, one of our kind of core markets going forward. It's sort of a global priority market for us, if you will. And the reason is that, first of all, we have an organization there that we've built up over the years that, as you say, is very much it's very much an Indian company that has been able to compete, that's been able to innovate, that's been able to be very, very, successful since about 2000, and we think that's going to continue. Now, you said that we sort of hit a speed bump. We went through a sort of a turnaround period where we got the business into profitability and we started to establish leadership there. Today, we do about 60, on a good day, we'll do about 60 million homes watching Star Plus, for example, which is a big number, and that's all cable and satellite homes. So we drive the whole pay television business as well as the leading kind of channel group within that. But we certainly lost a little bit of velocity, I think, a few years ago for a couple of reasons. But we actually never lost our leadership with our core channel. I think a lot of people thought we were going to, but it came closer and it got a lot more competitive, but actually we've managed to pull away again now. So Star Plus today is still number one in the marketplace by a country mile. And what we've been able to do is build up a whole number of new businesses alongside that and invest alongside that to change that. Now, what's happening in India today, it's not immune to all the pressures that we see around the place, but you have an enormous kind of entrepreneurial, driven growth profile of the whole economy that we think is very exciting. So we continue to invest in India. Today we have a good piece of the largest MSO in India, a good piece of the fastest growing, and we think the best DTH platform in the country called Tata Sky Broadcasting with a few partners there. And our core channel group is strong. And we're going to continue. I think you'll see us looking at getting more local, doing more. We've started some of our regional language channels because India is really a number of nations in one or a number of communities in one. Our regional broadcasting business will be more important to us in the future, and our sort of core quasi-national Hindi language entertainment business, we think we just have to keep investing and keep competing with, because India is a marketplace for us. We look at a market and we say, well, where's a marketplace in a business that's going to change our lives over the next 10 years? And those are the places that we want to really commit to and look at over an investment period of that type. And India is definitely one of those. It's hugely important for us.
Running around the global, Italy was a market where News Corp went into that market with the acquisition of Telepiù from Vivendi, and the knee-jerk reaction among most people in the popular press, certainly in the investment community, was this was a bad idea. I think most people said Italians, as a group, it was a market that was totally just running rampant in terms of piracy. They were never going to pay for pay television. The market just was not going to sustain a business and the investment level that News Corp made. And now you've got a business that probably is worth $8 to $10 billion, if not substantially more than that. Throws off a tremendous amount of cash. What happened in Italy? Why did Italy work so well versus expectations, at least from outside News Corp? And how do you use that to judge other markets you might want to go into in pay TV around the world?
Well, I don't think Italy was an isolated case of people thinking that we were totally wrong. And I think, and for sure, sometimes we are wrong, right? But it's a lot of times. But I think the key thing here is that people overestimate the resilience of the status quo in environments that are dominated by kind of cozy monopolies or duopolies, usually between sort of state broadcasters and franchised sort of competitors. So they say that's the status quo, and no one will allow that to change. It's the same thing in the UK over 20 years ago, or just about 20 years ago. Just about 20 years ago about BSKB. They said this and this can't be done. Nobody will want to pay for television. We have the BBC, we have other things, et cetera. And now, more than a third of the country chooses that service, and it's become a telecoms company as well and other things. In Italy, that overestimation of the status quo definitely happened. Certainly the experience of looking at Telepiù and Stream and how those businesses had gone was something that people, took, I think, too much. They took too much comfort from, saying, well, surely it can't be done if it hasn't been done so far. So I think the other part about the overestimation of the strength of the status quo is that people underestimate the huge impact that kind of organizational transformation can have, and the huge impact that you can have by applying, across the board, kind of the sort of focus that we do, which is really all about thinking from our customers' perspective, thinking that our customers, thinking about how they want to consume their media, how we make things better for them. I haven't met anybody yet, anywhere, who says, listen, I don't want better customer service, I don't want choice, I don't want a free marketplace of ideas, I don't want to be able to choose what I want to watch, when I want to watch it, and I don't want fair pricing, right? I haven't yet met that person, yet every time we go into a market, they say, Italians don't want those things. They say, the British people, they don't want those things. I say, why doesn't a British person want better customer service, better pricing, more choice, better content, higher quality, better technology, all of those things? People do, and if you can go across the board and look at every single way that a company kind of interacts with the marketplace and interacts with the customer, then I think you can do great things.
So it's not all about football.
It is not all about football. Actually, the great mistake that a lot of investors, I think, make in the pay television market, you see a lot of startups around the world, and you see people get into it, and they say, I've read an article about B-Sky B. What you do is you pay too much for football, and then you're done, right? That's what they go, that looks good. It's a contract-driven mentality about it, but it is so much more than that. And I think when you look at where we've been right, it's when we've been able to go in and really apply those things sort of across the board, and then also stick it out. So this is the other thing, is having conviction. I mean, I remember going to, talking about growing Sky in the UK past, we were at 7 million customers, and we said, we think we can do better than this. We think there's a lot more to play for, and everyone had assumed that there was nothing more to play for, that we were done, that we didn't have any broadband business. We were at 7 million customers. We had all the, they either said, you have all the rich people already, so clearly you're going to have to collapse your pricing, or they would say, listen, this is just for council houses and football fans. So you sort of can't have it both ways. And I remember very well, the marketplace hated it. They said, this can't be done, and they marked us down 20-something% in a day in the shares and all this sort of stuff. And it was really one of those moments where an organization, the culture of an organization gets tested, because you either have the conviction that you can go and you have a product that is inclusive and generous and for everyone, or you don't. And we really separated the wheat from the chaff, even internally in the business, in terms of the culture of the business. And it was very, very interesting. I see the same thing in parts of the newspaper business, actually, where the newspaper industry has spent so much time sort of wringing its hands about sort of things that are essentially exogenous to it, and not enough time thinking about their customers' daily lives. Well, I mean, I think if you look at, I did it, like this conference, for example, is really refreshing, because it's the first one I've been to, for a while. I don't go to many of these things, where we talk about thriving on disruption, we talk about bringing change, et cetera. If you think about it, over the last, since 1996 or something, right? When some of the public market caps of internet companies started to go big. And at that point, they weren't that big, but we all thought they were. We thought that it was amazing that Yahoo was worth more than Reader's Digest, in 1996. And people said, golly, isn't that amazing? There's something wrong here, people said. We've had this mentality in the media business, right? That there's a division between old and new media, that there's this distinction that traditional media is going to struggle to keep up, that you're going to be holding back a flood, or, running to stay in place, or whatever it is, right? But actually, companies that have thrived and firms that have thrived are the ones that actually, go and bring more change and accelerate the pace of change going forward. And if that means, going, we were listening this morning to talk about PVRs, and that PVRs are a problem for ratings. Customers love PVRs. It can't be a problem. It basically makes television much better experience. Right, so actually, how do you take it? We have a huge advertising business, not huge, but a big advertising business in the UK on television, and we, took a strategic decision that whatever it meant, we had to get as many PVRs in our customers' hands as possible, because it makes them love TV more, right? And that's about bringing change that is disruptive, proactively, and shaping the marketplace to your strengths. And I think that's a much, much better way to approach it.
But the advertising world is obviously suffering worse than most people have ever seen in their lifetime, in this environment. How is it changing what you do, and how you think about where News Corp, at least under your territories of oversight, should go?
Well, I think on the one hand, the sharpness of the experience that anyone in the advertising business is having now, and I would include, newspapers, television, internet companies. I mean, everybody I think is feeling it pretty sharply. Causes you, number one, and sort of first order is to get a handle on your cost base. Priority number one, and make sure that money isn't being spent that doesn't need to be spent, because it is going to be pretty stormy weather for all of that. And it's almost particularly if you're in businesses that are going to exist anyway, right? So we're going to keep making television in the pay television business if advertising is up 10% or down 10% or 20% or whatever it is, right? So that's basically essentially all margin, right, that comes out, because you still have to satisfy the customer because you're getting whatever it is on the other side, 30 euros, 40 euros, depending on the package. Now, so I think there's an urgent priority to get the organization extremely fit, right? And actually, we've spent the last year actually in a number of our operations around the world actually reorganizing them a lot, because we didn't think it was going to be like this, but we thought we can do better than this. Now, the next piece is, I think, not to make sure that we don't rush into things, because actually, we were just talking outside, the next 18 to 24 months, if not sooner, things are going to become possible that we never would have believed were possible. And if you look at the sort of dislocation of sort of, earnings essentially from market value is just extraordinary in a lot of different sectors. And I think there are opportunities that are going to come up. And what you don't want to do is be strong now and blow it on something in the first part of the storm, and then something really amazing is going to happen 12 months from now, 18 months, and opportunities that you never would have imagined were open to you could be open to you in a very different way. So I think we've got to be careful. Now, globally, for us, we are, touch wood, in a reasonably strong position. We have a very strong balance sheet. We have, we don't have a big, some big sort of shopping list where we know we have to do X, Y, and Z. Our businesses are performing well, and we want to go into this marketplace from a position of strength. And actually, on an operating basis, we're going to be pushing for share. We're going to be, trying to move faster than our competitors, some of whom we think are going to hit the wall. And that's really local decisions that you have to make everywhere. Somebody, I shouldn't say, one of our competitors, for example, in India, is going to capitulate, right? In terms of being able to raise capital and go out there and keep going, et cetera. We know that these things are going to happen. I think across other markets as well, we're going to see real pressure where people have spent too much on assets to come into a marketplace where we might be already. And what we have to do now is make sure that that's a very unsuccessful strategy for them, right? So we need to push our advantage where we can and be very, very aggressive. Now, if we can do that organically, we'll be very, very strong. And I think over the next, as I said, I think opportunities are going to arise either to start new things or acquire things at values that we just never would have heard of. Now, at the same time, right now, it's also pretty hard to sell things. So, we've got,
You got a couple of things for sale.
I wouldn't say for sale. We got a couple of things that we're looking at that we're considering
Optimizing
all of
the
our
portfolio?
options. Yeah. And it's a very tough time to do that, obviously, right now. So we were approached about a couple of assets earlier this year, and for one reason or another, through the summer, as those processes kind of went along, we just didn't, they just didn't get done in this market, and that's fine. The good news is they're good businesses, and particularly if you look at our Eastern European television business, a free-to-air business when challenged just like any, but just with an incredible creative team, a huge advantage in terms of share, and I think we did a 40 share the other night against a 20 with our nearest competitor, and it's a very strong business. That's the sort of business that you want to really just drive harder right now and make sure you're creating something extremely durable.
I started off by saying that that you left a very solid, stable business in pure pay TV. How good is the pay TV business weathering this storm that we see globally now?
Well, look, I can't, I think this storm is developing pretty fast, I think we would all say, and we've seen changes. We look out there in the market, we see what other companies are saying about how things have changed through the autumn as it's gone along. But the thing about our businesses, and if we just go back to what Sky reported its results, Sky in the UK a little while ago, and our numbers at Sky Italia a few weeks ago, those two businesses in particular we can talk about. They're strong businesses, and the reason that they're strong businesses is Jeremy Derrick, my successor at Sky, he said the other day, you can buy everything we sell. You can basically buy everything we can possibly sell you if you're a family in the UK and get all of it, all you can eat for a month for the cost of taking your family out for a pizza, right? That's huge, huge value. So that's your broadband package, your landline, your telephone package, that's your movies, your sports, your on-demand programming, all of your basic channels, all of that sort of stuff. It's about the cost of taking a family of 4 out for a pizza. Now, a few pizzas, but it's 4 people. There was a teenager there. But anyway, it's a...
Hungry.
And that sort of value is fundamental. And I think when people weigh that up and they say, what am I getting here? How am I going to prioritize my spending? Right now, I think they're just getting great value. And that's not to say we're not going to come under pressure, right? And somebody might say, maybe I won't have this movies package or other things. People are making choices across the board. There's no question about that. And I think visibility going forward is tricky because we don't know what's going on. But these are very durable franchises, and they have, just a huge numbers of customers that have been served very, very well by the companies for a number of years. And I think there's loyalty there. I mean, our platform in Italy, Sky Italia, has 4.5 million families that have chosen that service over the last 5 years, and they get a service that is extraordinary. It's an Italian company that has been just a great success story for Italy and for them. And we think it has fundamental durability.
Well, and a truly local business in Italy.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. We're and the whole way we approach all these businesses is not, we don't sort of sit in LA and say, look, we can sell a whole bunch of stuff around the world. That's a component of some of our businesses. That's a component of our Fox Television business, for example, or some of our movies businesses and things like that. But even our movies business now, we have a joint venture between Star and Fox in India right now, getting into Indian movie production there. Because we like a marketplace and we think it's a marketplace that we can do a great job in. We really try to build up the talent in the marketplace. We try to train people in. We try to bring people through the organization, and that's something that I think creates real strength. So our Indian business is an Indian company for all the reasons that you would think. Our Italian business is an Italian company. 99.9% of the people there are Italians who have come through and learned it with us, and we've built up. And I think that's part of the durability of our business, and that's part of why we like doing these things. One of the reasons why our scale internationally, even though you don't always see it at news in terms of the way we report our numbers, and also the fact that some of it's unconsolidated, the scale internationally is off the charts relative to our competitors, our sort of global comps, and we think that's great strength for us over the next few years.
So you went into Germany. I think most people probably know that. Was there anything unique to why Germany versus Spain? And how you thought about, why you went into that market at the time that you went in?
Look, every marketplace is totally different, yet there are common themes as well. But there are differences. So I think comparing Germany and Spain, there's so many different circumstances around that in terms of, the availability of investments, the price of those investments, the situations around it, what the competitive set looks like, how many problems in a business may be of the company's making, and how many may be part of the environment around it, which is obviously harder to change. So I don't think you can really. It's not apples to apples. Just saying there's one variable that's different, and that's the thing that tips it over. There's quite a lot there. But
the opportunity looks a lot larger than it is even in Italy.
We made an investment in Germany in Premier earlier in the year. We saw an opportunity to be able to acquire a substantial number of shares in the business, which we thought was the right thing to do. And the company now, which has now had a complete change of management, and is putting together its strategy going forward. They announced their numbers this morning. We think is, like all shareholders, we're looking at it and saying, this is interesting, but we want to see what the management comes up with and says, how do we do this? Now, the German market is a lot bigger than the UK or Italy. It's got a lot of problems, just like any market nowadays. But we've been kicking around Germany for many, many years in different businesses, from Viva or Vox, I should say, to an original investment in Premier, and now we're an investor again. And we'll just have to see how it goes, but it's very early days. but it is a very big market.
I think Spencer wants to take some questions.
I was just going to say, anybody in the audience have questions? There's one right there in the front. Hold it.
Hey, James, you haven't talked a lot about your internet businesses.
Could you stand up because they'll be able to see better? Okay.
James, you haven't talked a lot about your internet businesses. You've talked a lot about extending your brands and running your businesses more effectively. Can you share with us some of the successes you had in extending, particularly your print businesses, to the internet, and where you see some of the future opportunities for you with the internet?
Sure, thanks, Toby. I think our internet. One of the problems when we think about sort of internet businesses is that there are so many different things that could fit into that category, right? So everything from something that we have very high hopes for. We're starting this thing with the Times and Sunday Times brands, actually, because they're sort of particular type of customer, called Culture Plus. Basically, it looks a lot like a loyalty program, but it's all driven online. It's all about driving subscriptions to the papers. So you think about one of the key problems in newspaper readership, it's frequency, right? And it's because the newsagent's gone away or whatever it is, you may buy 3 times instead of 5 times a week, et cetera. So how do you get that engagement level up? And essentially what we've done is we've created an online subscription there that if you subscribe to the newspaper, you get a certain number of things, but then you get an enormous amount of benefits within a community of readers, be it with this particular instance, you get, in addition to the newspapers and the online products, you get things like theater tickets and other things. It's Culture Plus, it's called, so you do all this sort of business. But it does great. You go to a West End show and things like that. You get discounts, and it's a way for us to then take advertisers and drive them online into this engagement with our readers as well. And it's just started a few months ago, but it's actually pretty exciting. And I think if we can turn that sort of online engagement with readers of our journalistic product, that's something that has an enormous amount of promise. And I think you'll see more around communities of interest than you will see, sort of grand strategy of saying, look, we're going to be the biggest news site, for, I don't know, British people somewhere. It's not, I think actually it's your readers, it's the core people who you want to engage with, and how do you do that online? You can do it much more effectively. You have everything from that to, as I said before, the bingo business, which is a pure online business, which is a pretty big business for a local newspaper in the UK. Now, on the other side, we took a very different approach to our online business at Sky, for example, right? And our online business at Sky is around, very simple strategy of saying, listen, there's a big category in sport that we need to be very, very focused on because we have a state intervention sitting next to us in the BBC and their online operation, which is just, off the charts in terms of investment and lack of accountability together, which is pretty scary. So we had to have a big presence in sports there to keep going. We had to think about how we gave our customers more flexibility in terms of how they used content, right? So a Sky Movies customer, we had to say, listen, if you're buying Sky Movies from us, we need to be indifferent to how you consume it, right? So if you want to download that movie online, if you want to watch it on a PlayStation Portable, or if you want to watch it on the satellite or store it in your hard drive for however long you like, depending on the different deals with the studios, et cetera, we need to allow you to do that. So we built a system to do that so our customers can download the movies online. They can take them with them. They can do all those things. That's all part of that subscription. And then going further on the spectrum, also at Sky, we decided that we wanted to, be an infrastructure provider. And we did that. And now, I think it's six or 7 quarters in a row, we've been the fastest growing telecoms player in the UK marketplace off the back of, we bought a network backbone, and that's it with no customers in it. So I think, you can play across the whole spectrum there. You can invest across the whole spectrum. The key thing about the content businesses, though, the newspaper businesses or, the TV businesses, et cetera, I think the real question for me is how you get customer engagement ramped up in a huge way, right? And how you also make sure that you have a business, or that we have a business. For us, what we worry about is having something that's more than simply hoping that the scale of an audience is going to deliver display advertising money to us, because we just don't see ultimately that that's going to be enough, that you'll be able to control pricing. There's ultimately too much inventory, and that's a big challenge. And one of the things, I know Travis Katz is here. I think he's talking in a little while. That maybe he'll talk about as well, is when you look at the online space in general, as you well know, Toby, the sort of explosion of inventory is something that is even the biggest players struggle to get a handle on, and I think that's a big risk over the long term for how we've thought about the internet advertising kind of model. So is that a sort of some of the stuff we're up to?
We'll take one more over there, and we'll give it back to Rich then to finish up.
Hi, Ashraf with Abu Dhabi Media Company. I wanted to ask about the Arab world. Have you guys, I'm sure you've looked at how to get into the Arab world, and some things scared you. So you're all around the region, but you never went into the region. And Fox Financial Network, is there any way you can turn it around and save it, or what are you going to do about it?
Save Fox Business News?
Yeah.
I just started. I don't think it needs to be saved yet.
It hasn't taken off. It's been almost a year, and
well,
it's
you have to
staggering.
remember, let's just adjust that first. And I'm not that close to the numbers on Fox Business, so forgive me, right? But I'll tell you what, when we launched Fox News, I remember very well going to the 1-year anniversary of Fox News in Washington, D.C. My father couldn't make it there, and I had to go, he gave me he said, go and say something nice, because he had to be somewhere, right? I had to go, and it was a bunch of journalists who had been, these guys were real, they had done something that everybody thought, to go back to your point, people thought we were crackers, completely insane. Why would anybody want anything other than CNN? You're all nuts. This is not a place where choice will work. You're going to spend all this money. And we were right in the teeth of a fight with Time Warner Cable that was vicious, and we were not on in New York yet and all this sort of stuff. It took us years to get the distribution to actually turn the Fox News channel into the kind of business it is today financially, right? Years. It took, I think it was something like 5 years or something to get to critical mass.
And the real fruits of that labor are just starting to be born now as they benefit from distribution of that network at much higher fees. And so it really took a decade for it to be what it is today.
So Fox Business News is 1 year in. It's actually further along on the curve in terms of affiliates, right? In terms of customers that it has clearance for, right? Its pricing is stronger than all of the comps if you go back to the launch of Fox News Channel. And in fact, I think, and I shouldn't say don't quote me on this because it's a public forum. I might be wrong on this, but I think it's the fastest, most successful launch of a new cable product in U.S. cable history, right? So don't be impatient, right? We are, if anything, a patient sort of investor, but this thing, as far as I can tell and as far as the business can tell, is on track in terms of the launch. And launching a cable network in the U.S. is hard because you got to go and deal with every, cable operator, all this sort of business. So I think it's not yet, in a position where we have to think about saving it. I think that would be bad. The other question about the Middle East, we do have a presence in the Middle East. You're right. We are not as present there as in other places. We sell a number of channels to some of the pay broadcasters there who have not grown very fast, and certainly what we've seen in the GCC anyway is really the explosion of popularity in the free-to-air broadcasters, the NBCs of the world and whatnot across the region, and that's really a very different sort of satellite television model than has emerged elsewhere, but one that is pretty interesting. I think, you got to think about it. You know it as much better than I do. The way that advertising is sold in the GCC on television is a challenge. I think there are bottlenecks in that system, and that makes new investment difficult. But at the same time, we think for lack of a better word, the sort of the Arab consumer is going to be a much more potent economic force over the next decades, and that's something where we need to be, and we need to be there at the ground up. It's incredible. When you look at Saudi Arabia, for example, there is no filmic shared cultural history in Saudi Arabia. It's fascinating. How many, I don't know, Makram's there, this. How many movies are made in Saudi Arabian movies in history? 3. 3? So yeah, 3. Imagine not having a filmic cultural history there, right? So that's just starting now. The reason is that because of the theaters, you don't have people mixing, right? So I think it's a fascinating and huge opportunity, and I think you'll see more activity from a lot of people in the Middle East, from a lot of investors there, people like us, et cetera, over time. The thing about the Gulf states where you are in Abu Dhabi as well, it seems to me the huge opportunity in infrastructure is really interesting. There's so much capacity that you've put in just along throughout the Emirates, for example, for business data, right, and to attract all this sort of stuff. But I mean, literally, last mile fiber is so cheap to put in because it's all sand, right? So you have these huge fiber networks going from one side of the Gulf to the other. Yeah, and it's like 10 feet from somebody's door, but nobody's thought about building a world-class 21st century digital cable business there. And I think that needs to, that'll create a real explosion in access, particularly in the high end. So we're pretty excited about the Middle East. We have to find the right way over time, but I think you're absolutely right to innovate. It's sort of a hole there where we're not as present, and over time we'd probably like to fix that.
Just to wrap up, I kind of guess two kind of questions related in a sense. One, from a standpoint of markets that you're not in. Are there any markets where you look out over the next 5 years and you think you just have to be there in some form 5 years from now, even if you have no presence there really today? And then two, just as a final close, we've got the team from MySpace here, beyond throwing a cocktail party tonight for everyone. They've created a tremendous global presence that layered onto News Corp. How does that help, or what are the synergies or potential benefits of that platform to everything you're doing in News Corp Europe and Asia?
I think the first thing when you think about markets that we're not in that we think are important for us. If you look at what I said before, what's a marketplace? How we sort of figure out what a global priority needs to be for us is we sort of ask ourselves, is this going to change our lives over the next 10 years? Is this something that is going to be of scale, that we can really do something that's going to change our business? And I think the places where we are right now, between the UK, Italy, we're an investor in Germany, in emerging markets. It's really the big priorities for us are Turkey and India. Very, very important. I think we have to ask questions to ourselves about the Middle East, for example, to the gentleman's point. Yep. And I think we have to ask questions about ourselves about Indonesia and the scale of our commitment in Indonesia. Other than that, I think we want to be pretty sort of fleet of foot, and I think everyone needs to be to the standpoint that we cannot predict today what the opportunities that are going to emerge are or will be, and I think that there are going to be surprises. And opportunities that that come to people who are strong through a period like this, and we have to be very open-minded. But today, I think the mix of assets that we have, the mix between the sort of subscription pay businesses and pure advertiser business is actually very, very strong. Rich always focuses on the newspaper businesses because he gets upset about them. But if you look at our mix across Europe and Asia, the newspaper business is actually a pretty tiny part of the overall mix of these businesses, which are very, very robust and very diverse in terms of how they work. So I think making those businesses better, probably growing some of our positions in some of these places, either launching new regional channels in India, or expanding our presence in a place like Turkey where we have the free-to-air business. So it's been an investment for us. It's losing money today, or we're still investing money, but is really showing signs of promising growth. We've doubled our audience share in the last year, et cetera. Those are the sort of things that we're going to be doing.
And then on MySpace, just to close.
Well, it's incredible. I know those guys are here, and they've just done an unbelievable job and seen the explosion of how that business has gone. We do work together. Across the different parts of news, we don't have a big bureaucracy. We have a tiny. I don't even think you can call it a bureaucracy. There's like a couple of guys in the company sort of that look across things. But actually, what we try to do is we try to get through the business, right? People talking to each other and collaborating and working with each other. So we try not to sort of we don't like central planning, kind of philosophically, and that applies to business too. We like entrepreneurs and we like people to go and drive things, et cetera. Now, what we try to do is encourage them to work together. So I think, with MySpace, for example, there's this thing, we work together a lot on marketing campaigns, for example. So we had this thing in Turkey recently that was a huge thing where we had a TV show about a girls' team, a girls' basketball team that we were launching that really asked a lot of hard questions about gender, about sort of gender relations, about religion, about class in Anatolia, and all of this sort of stuff. It was a great product. And we launched it by having the fictional character put up a MySpace page and start talking about these issues on her video blog, so we didn't say what it was. And it was a sensation across the nation. It was leading the news on all of our competitors' newscasts. It was front page news on all the newspapers, right? And then the reveal that it was this television show had the nation saying, this is an incredible contribution that Fox Turkey has made. It was really something, and it really drove, you know, the brand and the business going forward. And I think that sort of collaboration is really exciting. And we do it in more, you know, sort of traditional ways as well. I was telling Rich earlier, you know, we've just started a book imprint around our Sky Real Lives brand, which is a true life story cable channel, right? And then we do true life story books, and we do them together. And we've actually managed to make a really good business there. Now, you can do that thousands and thousands and thousands of times if it's coming from within the organization, you know, and there's going to be some dyssynergies, right? But if you centrally plan it, you won't be able to do those thousands of times, and you get those incremental benefits. So that's sort of the way we think about how we work across the group.
I think we're out of time.
You are indeed. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you,
And
everyone,
Rich.
very much, and thanks, Rich.